with their business in District 11 finally concluding, the Damned Dozen journey to their next destination. It's year 984-05. 2 weeks have passed since the Damned Dozen took care of the job at K Corp, and the immense dullness of travelling through the nest by car was just starting to sink in. Dante was pretty sure that they saw a road that looked exactly like the one they were on 30 minutes before. Faust then explained that the way roads are in the nest and the back streets, they're quite different, but in the nests, they're the same throughout it. In the back streets, they're the same throughout it. In the back streets, they could find a shortcut in the alleyways and corners, but in the nest, it means abominable traffic jams that you'd find in some parts of Africa in our world. Roger understood why people with cash to spare spent it on W Corp's warp trains. Don Quixote was unnerved by this. She understood how dangerous the warp trains were, the dark truth of how they were truly operated. But she didn't say specifically what this was. But it was enough to silence the bus, due to what some of them saw in the mirror worlds. Sinclair preferred riding the bus. Masson agreed with this. Roger suggested that they take a nap like Heathcliff. She was bored to death just staring out the window, so the days went by, due to the mind-numbing boredom with little progress made. Then they reached a tunnel that seemed to lead nowhere. Faust announced that they were almost there. The road would free up once they exited that tunnel. Dante noticed the traffic jam appeared to visibly improve, allowing them to make actual progress. They saw this as good. They couldn't see much yet, but they were glad that they're almost there. Then they wanted to know where their destination was. Now that is a good question. Where are they going? They were blindly guided to who knows where, so they asked if it was about time Virgilius started telling them where they were going. Faust translated this to Virgilius. Dante was considering asking him if he could tell them where they were going before they left, but they thought better than that. According to Virgilius, the current destination, where they were going, well, the final destination was a branch facility located at K Corp. So District 21. K Corp is known for its packaging that keeps things in their current state, mostly to keep food from going bad. Yes. I remember Angelica asking Roland to bring some Pagion and to use a preservation box to make sure it's fresh when he delivers it, and, well, we already know what happened there. And Ishmael was alerted by this news that they were heading to District 21, and Roger noticed this as she spooked her. Ishmael apologized for this. I think we can guess who's the focus of Chapter 5, although Dante was unsure of why she jolted suddenly. But they decided not to bring that up for now. Dante wanted to know what he meant by final destination. Virgilius informed them that they're heading to a temporary stop. And just as Virgilius finished this sentence, the bus emerged from the lengthy tunnel. Don Quixote was excited at the sight that appeared, as was Sinclair. Dante looked out the window and saw the cleanest sandy beach and the most turquoise blue ocean that they had ever seen or even had graced their eyes. Don Quixote asked if that was the great lake in front of her, and this woke everyone up from their naps, one by one. Gregor had apparently seen that before, but it's been a while since then. This sight impressed Rudyard, as she'd only ever heard of that place, having not been there herself. All of the sinners were excited, and, well, except for one, Ishmael, as this was unnerving, not believing that it's her turn already, not believing that they're ready for this yet. Dante asked her if she was good, having concern for her uncharacteristic behavior. Yes, that's the right way of putting it, as she usually the voice of reason. She wasn't fine though, although she just said that, well, she needed a moment, time to think. The sudden gloominess was noticeable. Although Dante had faith that she'd be okay, she was usually on top of things. Not in this case, considering what's being foreshadowed. Then their focus was on the enthusiasm of the others. Don Quixote was excited at the prospect of journeying towards the Great Lake. Sinclair had only heard of it, but had never seen it himself, at least until that point. Don Quixote suspected that they would be rewarded with a seaside picnic. Hong Lu thought it would be nice to have a vacation there. A fun experience. Yi Sang wished to lie upon the summery sand and gaze up at the sky, if they're permitted to rest. Rudyard wanted to get a tan on a long beach. Don Quixote wanted to try a game of volleyball with everyone. Heathcliff liked the sound of that. They were all chatting about what to do, excited about this change of scenery. But then, Gregor asked Virgilius if they're really stopping at the beach. Yeah, Virgilius never mentioned that they'd be stopping at the beach, and then he asked back, "What do you think?" And then said, "Charon?" And then she told them that they were going to, Charon was going to hitch wheel in a ditch, and then stepped on the brakes and they screeched and the bus stops in the usual manner. Sudden and sending the others flying. Except in this case, it was due to the bus swerving. Don Quixote was annoyed by this. Virgilius told them that this was their stop. They got back on their feet, groaning in pain. Roger was confused by what she was seeing. Don Quixote shouted, "What in the name of the wings?" to a dank, dark, desolate and junk-strewn environment. Was Virgilius taking the just then? Well, if he did, he needed to take what he could, considering what he had to put up with a bunch of misfits, near-psychotics, and emotional retards. Don Quixote continued her dismay at her surroundings. She didn't think that this could be. How were they to enjoy a vacation in a place like that? About that, Gregor caught on quicker. It wasn't surprising to him, as it was with her. Gregor understood that Virgilius never mentioned that they're there for a vacation. Ryosho saw it as rather quaint. NB. No bother? Roger was with Don Quixote on that one, asking what was the point of showing them that beautiful beach earlier. Sinclair wasn't the only one that didn't keep his expectations low, as he was disappointed, wishing that he never even saw that beach. Don Quixote pointed out the beach. The air appeared pristine, its skies were clear, asking why they weren't there. Faust answered that, well, it was because that wasn't their destination. Don Quixote couldn't believe this. Most of the others shared Don Quixote's disappointment. Even Dante was excited to have a proper rest, but based on their experiences, they had a feeling that this was going to happen. They then asked where this was exactly. Faust was about to say this, but Ishmael told them that it was the back streets of District 21. Repeating herself, saying that they're not ready for this. Faust confirmed this, not used to being interrupted. Dante, realized that it's why there's been no congestion since the tunnel, since they're not in a nest. I really hope there's no congestion charge in District 20, because if it's loosely based on London, that would be digging deep. Well, ultra-low emission charges, or whatever you want to call it. Well, Faust then told them not to generalise, as it varies depending on the nest and its backstreets, but it is the case with District 21, though. Honglu asked if that was the private beach over there. The water, its colours were very different from the side that they were on. Utis saw it as a boundary, as though hewn by a blade. Telltale signs of the place's nature. Faust was about to confirm this, but Ishmael interrupted her again, saying that it's the Great Lake. It's how it's always been. The well-maintained vacation spots like that, it's usually nest territory. Faust was getting mildly annoyed by her explanations getting hijacked. Dante asked if where they were counts as the backstreets, as it's so open. Backstreets, well, Faust basically defined them as anything that isn't directly controlled by the nests, as in what the wings don't want to directly control, which are usually vulnerable to organised crime. Dante understood this explanation. Heathcliff didn't think much of his surroundings. The mingling rubbish, the place being in shambles. He'd be surprised if it wasn't the back streets. Basically, if it looks it's likely to be the back streets. Then Don Quixote found something useful in the trash, a radio. Heathcliff told her to finish her sentence, as she stopped midway. She told him that it moved, which confused Heathcliff. She replied that the radio moved, asking if radios in District 21 move around on their own. And this confused Heathcliff further, and then a pile of trash revealed something more dangerous. A monster that was quite aggressive. And more of them appeared, meaning that they had to fight them off. After fighting the creatures that saw them as food, Heathcliff asked what the bug crab things were, forgetting that this was a sensitive subject for Gregor. This made Gregor ask with annoyance, what is he looking at him for? What makes him think that he'd know? Heathcliff wasn't even looking at him, seeing this as paranoid. He can't even talk about bugs around him. Gregor was holding himself back so that his biomimetic arm doesn't lose control. Ishmael, perhaps to keep the peace, told them that they're trash crabs. and this was new to Dante. Ishmael explained that they collected trash, like that on their shelves, and used them as their homes, as well as weapons. She sees them as tiresome, ambushing people working by the waters, attacking those wandering in the area, and their numbers grow by the day. They're just one of the innumerable small fries of the Great Lake. What's more important and more treacherous is... Well, this was worrying Dante, but before they could check in on her, they had company that wasn't of the crustacean variety. Two that would be familiar if you've been through the story of Library of Ruina. The red-haired, ponytailed girl in a dirty shirt and dungarees saw them as already at work. Then the male with the chain polearm told the girl, whom he addressed as Mika, to watch her manners. They're valued customers. Mika looked annoyed by this being corrected. Ryushu asked, "What are those R&Ts?" Sinclair understood her to say that she's calling them rags and tags. Mika told the male that she's addressing as Rain, that they've been called called ragtags. Asking if she really has to watch her manners, Rain tried to silence her. Otis was on her guard, suspecting them to be enemies, telling them to identify themselves. Rain asked if they were informed of them at all. They weren't. That's why Otis was suspicious of them. They were coming up with seemingly plausible yet unverifiable identities, like spies. Mika asked her, would real spies come up with a more structured approach? Faust stepped in and told them that Mika and Rain are their cooperators, who will be assisting them this time. Otis told her to speak sooner next time. Faust then greeted them and introduced them as LCB, Limbus Company Bus Department. Mika was reminded that was what that person said too, seeing them as the bus blokes. Faust told them that the LCC before team was there first, by that person, asking if they mean, I suspect that person will appear at some point in Chapter 5. Then Rain checked their business card and saw that they're all accounted for. Mika decided that now that they're all clear, they should continue this conversation back at the shop. They could look at the bus as well, seeing the outside as an awkward place to talk. Dante was surprised to find out that they are their customers. Gregor wanted to know what they were doing there. Faust answered that by saying that the nest of District 21 is composed of various nautical structures. Therefore, Mephistopheles in its current form can't get there. Ishmael added that the Great Lakes environs are unpredictable. They need a ship that can withstand such capriciousness. Virgilius appeared, confirming what Ishmael said, which is why they sought out a contract with an adequate shop to modify the bus. Gregor was concerned when he said adequate. Virgilius told them to go in. Rodia was worried, that the last staff dinner might have really hit the budget that hard. She thought that they were allowed to eat as much as they wanted that time. Dante shared her concern upon seeing the somewhat dilapidated shop. It made them concerned about Limbus Company's finances, but they decided not to speak of this as it wouldn't help anyone. Inside the Mola Boatworks, Mika told Rain that she was going to take a look at the bus, suggesting that he entertain the guests. Annoying as this was, he agreed to do so. knowing that as far as being in a workshop is concerned, Mika is the more experienced, as her father used to be a workshop owner. It likely came up in conversation at some point. The damned dozen were led into a workshop, packed with tools and various mechanical apparatuses. This met with Ortiz' approval, seeing it as capable of making more sophisticated modifications than it initially appeared. Rain asking if she recognizes what she sees. Ortiz went on to explain that during an unspecified war, possibly the Smoke War, it might be something completely different. It was of utmost importance to have a general understanding on arms and gear workshops. Rain understood that to make sense. Then a sudden and deafening noise sounded. Rain wanted to know what that was. Faust understood it to be Mephistopheles screaming, or sounding an alarm, rather. Mika apologizing, thinking that she might have done something wrong. Then they heard stomping noises. Rain asking if that's her as well. Sinclair directed their attention to what was outside. Missalt identified them as the same species that they encountered earlier. Sinclair seeing them as pretty similar. Missalt saw them as the same species, not pretty similar. Dante ordered everyone outside. They found themselves right in front of a giant trash crab, with a massive shipping container on its back, which was looming over them. They were overwhelmed by the sound of heavy metal scraping against the floor. Ortiz ordered them to spread out. Heathcliff he asked, where did they have to get cracking this time? And just as they were all starting to lose it, a voice answered them. It's Noggin, of course! A dark figure in an armoured wetsuit leapt down from somewhere onto the creature's head, much to the King Trash Crab's displeasure. This figure told it to sit still and quit struggling. She attacked it with a blinding light and a deafening explosion, making it screech in agony. This made it flee. This figure leaped gracefully from the back of the fleeing creature and slowly approached them. She laughed at this, which contrasted the depressing mudflat around her, the swim fins, a net, and a colossal harpoon as part of her gear. She recognized them as the bus people that Fella mentioned. Sometime later, they were back in the workshop, and Faust formally introduced them with Olga this time. They are from the Mola Boatworks, there to help them with modifications for Mephistopheles. Olga felt flattered by the intro. She cut her hair since we last saw her, likely out of practicality for what she just did. Her younger brother Rain cautioned her to watch her mouth as they're still their dear customers. Olga can't see what was wrong. She didn't do anything yet. Rain saw yet as the key word here. They've only just opened that business, so there's nothing wrong with being careful. Virgilius! Can imagine that a sudden switch in their career path could have been easy. Asking if it was manageable for, as he referred to her as Olga, Grade 5 Fixer. Well, it's not unheard of, as Salvador, operator of the Dawn office, used to be a Zwei Association affiliate, but switched to be an Lu Association affiliate at some point after the Smoke War. It's unclear what association that the Mola office was affiliated with, but it certainly wasn't Triss Association. At least, not until they were forced to, in order to survive in the backstreets of District 19. Just as Olga was about to say something, this made Don Quixote excited at the mention of Fixer. Olga didn't see this coming. Then Don Quixote barraged her with much, seeing her as one with the scent of a noble one. Where has she strayed from the path of a fixer? It must have been a grueling life. What was her most prolific district? Which association and which test did she take to rise to grade 5? A workshop exam at Trade Association? Virgilius had to look at her in his PTSD-inducing way in order to, make her understand the need to back off. He apologized to Olga. Soon there will be peace and quiet. Olga knew about the red gaze, and as a result she was surprisingly more formal than usual. It had been a while since she had to be this polite. He saw it as polite enough. Then were reminded of what happened over 1 year and 5 months ago. People have been returning one by one from the books since the incident at the library. He likely remembered Iori being one of them, but didn't see this worth mentioning here. He did ask, however, how was it for her? Olga told him that it was the same story there. One moment she was, am I dead? And next, she suddenly woke up somewhere around there. No Mika, no rain, she was starving. So she looked for some food. She then needed a reminder of how that went. Rain reminded her that a trash crab appeared. She fashioned a few things into a weapon, smashed its head in, turned it into a barbecue, and that was her hunger sated. Yes, they're using British slang terms. I'm keeping most of this out. Seriously, did they originally come from the same place as Heathcliff? Regardless of where their office was? Olga didn't like the taste, though. Rain continued by saying that she started selling scrap metal from the back of those crabs. Olga then told Rain to do the storytelling. Roger saw Olga as having a rather flippant personality. Dante knows someone that has exactly that kind of personality. Roger pretended to not know what they meant. Olga saw Dante's head, seeing it as a prosthetic. Rain urged her to get to the point. She got the message. Rain basically told them that they were all fixers sucked into the library, getting wrapped up in receptions, and just when he thought they'd had it, he woke up, wandered around and he found Olga. They both collected scrap metal together and they found Mika along the way. They ended up running a workshop almost like they used to run an office before the library incident. As in dysfunctionally. Virgilia saw that there was no particular order in which they returned from the books. The pattern has yet to reveal itself to them. Well, we can be thankful for a certain selfish hole for that. Although that was to save an AI, of course. Of course. Virgilius was muttering to himself, looking at Faust, who stood near him. Faust nodded silently. Ishmael was silent at this. Dante knew that there was something between the two, but it was always something that they didn't understand. Besides, Ishmael was more of immediate concern, who was looking increasingly distraught. They needed to talk to her about this sudden change. Dante asked if she's been there before. She recognized the trash crabs. She confirmed this and asked if that was a problem. Dante did not see this as a problem. They were wondering how they tasted, as it sounds like people ate these crabs. Well, Dante, They wouldn't let something edible go to waste, as they'd be killing them anyway regardless. Ishmael saw what they were trying to do, but she told them she's had it more than a few times, this crab chowder. It had a digestible flavour once she got past the vomiting travelling back up her esophagus. So it's an acquired taste. Well, this answered Dante's question. They admitted that it wasn't the best question that they could come up with, and her reception was much colder than expected. Sinclair was surprised that it's edible, feeling disgust at that thought, as it's almost like an abnormality or a distortion. Dante did not, he didn't see it as either. Sinclair clearly wanted to know what that was. Faust explained that Dante can tell the difference without her explaining. They are, in fact, mutants! So there's no problem ingesting them. Yes, this is a case of mutant foes, although not like the old K Corp wing remnants encountered in District 4. These ones, for a start, are beasts. Honglu mentioned that his grandmother used to collect mutated animals. He's never seen anything like this one before, seeing it as a priceless experience. Mika calls them what they eat each day. She looked like she had something necessary to say, so Olga asked how much do they have to work on. Mika then replied, as her former workshop owner, her dad, put it, the whole shebang. Heathcliff asked, way down to the engines? Mika denied this, as she wouldn't go that far. She wouldn't dare mess with that. They're on a whole other level of complexity. Everything else needs changing, as there's no flotation device, no propellers, no steering gear, nothing for nautical travel. Dante asked, what do they do now? Faust translated this to the Mola Boatworks. Olga asked if Dante was saying anything, then went on to tell them what was needed. They have a plan, they just don't have the parts. Which Gregor assumes that they need them to collect scrap. Mika confirmed this, and from what she's observed of them, they are cut out for the job. Telling them to defeat the trash crabs and they should be able to collect the scrap that they're carrying. Gregor asking how many they need to kill. Mika said, a lot. Gregor understanding that's what they're there for. And Virgilius confirming this, seeing that collecting parts to modify the bus is easy compared to collecting a golden bar. Simpler too. Telling them to get to it at the beach, while he discusses the specifics with the Mola Boatworks. Don Quixote complaining that it's no beach. Ishmael looking out on it. Telling them that it was, even that mud flat is part of the Great Lake, also known as the sea. 2 days later, they fought many trash crabs and collected their scrap. Enough to fill more than a whole wagon. Mika saw this as enough for them to get started. Rodia was asking if they could rest now. She could hear her shoulders creaking with every move. Sinclair asking her to stop it. It looks like she was flexing them. Gregor seeing that it would take some time to modify the bus, so they have a few days to enjoy, although the location they were in was not a tourist attraction. They were relieved that the work was over, but Dante had a terrible feeling, that this was probably not the end of their toil. And Mika confirmed that, with Rodia asking what she meant. Mika said that the scrap that they collected was enough to get started, and Gregor said, which means, dreading what's next. Mika told them more scrap needed to be collected, of course. Gregor asked how much. Mika replied about 5 times the amount they've collected so far. Then Rain shouted to Mika that they need to work on the rear wheels as well. And then she corrected herself by saying 7 times more. Masalt noted that with their current productivity rating, they will not be provided with adequate rest, suggesting the reduction of the time dedicated to sleep would contribute to their collective efforts. Actually, that's more likely to decrease productivity, as that would cause at least some of them to collapse. And Don Quixote objected to this, as she looks like she was about to collapse. Yes. Clearly they've not heard of Kuroshi, as in working to death. And yes, Dante could probably reverse that, but best not to do that unless there's a need to. It's not something to use lightly. Then Roger asked how collecting scrap even helps modify the bus. Mika understood that bolting pieces of scrap to the bus wouldn't do anything significant, but using U Corp's singularity to fuse the parts, they can make them work, as though they were tailor-made for that bus. Roger believed that U Corp dealt with food packaging tech, which stopped the contents inside from spoiling or changing in any way until you opened the packaging. She used to eat a bunch of their canned food. Rain told them that he and Olga said the same thing. Some nests have more than one way of utilizing their singularity. Faustin explained that if the working principle is the same, one can always utilize the singularity's fundamentals to patent a singularity-based technology at A Corp. Much as F and J Corp's singularities can be weaponized by the Arbiters. U Corp is not only known for its stasis preservation packaging, but also for its resonance tuning fork. Ishmael noted that it works just like that. Entwined, fused with things, and eventually devours them all. As though they never even existed. Dante wanted to know what the problem was. Ishmael told Dante that they needed to tell Virgilius immediately. They have to collect the golden bowels of other branches first. This took Dante back, asking if Ishmael was okay. Clearly not, as I can pick up the PTSD coming from her. Ishmael then told Dante that they weren't ready. They were inexperienced. They didn't know enough about the Great Lake, nor about the whale. She'll help them out, to help Virgilius to understand. They shouldn't go there. Not yet. That place is... And then Heathcliff, the insensitive that he is, asked what had gotten into her. Was it indigestion from the crab chowder? She told him that she was totally fine. She ate the same thing that they did. That caused him to ask, what had gotten her throwing a fit? This isn't the first time that they're going in, not knowing anything about what they're doing. They've been dead enough times to get used to it. Ishmael didn't see dying this way through a mission as something to be proud of. If they were average fixers, they'd have been dead and gone on their first mission. Their names scraped clean, rather, from whatever association's registry. Heathcliff asks if she thinks that he's daft. He's had enough years toiling and brushing with death for the syndicates of the backstreets to know that he's got but one life. Yeah, we get it. You're a thug. I don't think we need to point that out anymore. Anyway, he sees it as different now. Dante can bring them back every time. Ishmael has experience of what's ahead. You don't, Heathcliff. She asks him if he thinks that they're simply lucky that Dante is able to bring them back intact. He doesn't see what the problem is. Well, they'll keep crawling back no matter how bad the injury until they've smashed the abnormality or whatever it is to pieces. Ishmael asks with increasing annoyance if he thinks that he's seen everything there is to see at this point. He hasn't. In the worst case scenario, Dante could turn back the clock all day and not be able to bring them back. What if they encounter something that they can't come back from, ever? Especially that monstrous Grail. She stops herself as it appears that she said too much. Yes. That story. And she might have mentioned someone that she used to be part of the crew of. This started to anger Heathcliff, telling her not to treat him like he wouldn't understand. He doesn't like it when she treats him like a complete idiot. She's not. She's treating you for what you are, someone who is inexperienced with the dangers of the Great Lake. She found this amusing. And just as Heathcliff was about to get violent, Yi Sang stopped them. He was saying that if they'll allow them to inquire, this was unexpected of Yi Sang. So the others took this seriously when he suddenly, loudly and uncharacteristically intruded upon their argument. He told them to call to mind the various desires of theirs that they so enthusiastically proclaimed on their journey there. It's true that there's still significant toils to be had, yet it's also said that they've accomplished a certain milestone. Perhaps a momentary respite is warranted. In short, they worked hard, they need rest, and he asked Dante if that's true. This surprised Dante, as this was the first time that Yi Sang appeared so dependable since they started their journey. They nodded and agreed with Yi Sang. They can slow down for a bit and do some team-building activities together. Asking how that sounds. Rain agrees that they can have some time off. They'll let them know once they're ready. Don Quixote had an idea of what to do. Beach volleyball. And this helped to defrost the icy mood slightly. In a different part of the back streets of District 21, Don Quixote spoke of witnessing something herself. She found a ball of sorts among the trash. There's no reason to deny themselves merriment when they have a ball, able bodies, and a beach all await them. Sinclair asks if they can really call the mudflats that they were on a beach. Gregor then reminded them that they're not there for a vacation. She was aware of that. She appreciated his advice, yet she can't deny such a proposal when an opportunity to bring them together waits itself. Or rather, presents itself. Gregor asked her to hold back the big grin next time. Yi Sang was in agreement with Don Quixote, and Gregor was surprised by this. Yi Sang hasn't been reflecting, as he's not got any memory of engaging in such a sport with his fellows. He's not particularly talented in games of the ball variety, but it's as good a time as any to experience this for once, so he'll partake in this game. Gregor was mildly annoyed. Ishmael kept saying that they're not ready. Heathcliff was laughing briefly. Ishmael doesn't see it as a time to play ball games. They've been slacking off too much as of late. They got too lucky last time. She practically oozes all over with an ominous aura. Dante understood that it might be a good idea to divert her attention for a bit, so they told everyone to play beach volleyball. Don Quixote saw this as a wise decision. Gregor was uneasy about designated by Dante, telling everyone to quit grimacing and accept it with gratitude. Gregor accepted this and hoped that he didn't pull his back playing this game. Masson was aware of the rules and the specifications of that game, and he offered to draw the arena. This had a mixed reception, but they got ready to play beach volleyball. Dante hoped that this would help break up the tense atmosphere. Well, at least once everything was set up. Don Quixote said that they can commence. The field was drawn over a squelchy mud flat. The ball was rocketing into the air with her serve. Yi-Sang asked if it was how the game was played. He received it well. A proper game was going. Rodya saw this as good. Hong Lu made his serve, as did Gregor. Ishmael saw this as meaningless. All of that. Ortiz served, and Sinclair barely avoided it, as that serve would have killed him if he hadn't dodged it. She considered it part of his training. Ryushu was silent as she brought out her sword, and Dante told her that she's not supposed to hit the ball with her sword. Don Quixote had received the ball, then Sinclair had received it. Ishmael saw this as wasting time, as they could be using it to study the whale's characteristics. Heathcliff was getting annoyed by this. Ishmael mentioned that they didn't even have a compass to guide them through the Great Lake. Nassault made a mental note of this. She mentioned that has got to still be alive, somehow. I suspect it's that guy, based on the source material. Heathcliff was getting sick of Ishmael's attitude, saying, "For sake, woman," which made him kick the ball with enough force that it might just burst. Seriously, if the men's England team were that capable, they wouldn't universally suck. Anyway, the ball flew over the mark, towards the boundary separating them from the pristine beach they saw a few days ago, and then it popped, and Dante asked if that's what happened. Faust confirmed this, mentioning a field of invisible plasma. Dante asked who would put a field of plasma on the beach. Faust stated that it was a barrier installed to separate the nest from the backstreets. It's how K Corp separates the nest from the backstreets in District 21. But the methods can vary between districts. Rodya understood that there are always fences to stop backstreets residents from crawling into the nests. But that technology doesn't make the ball disappear without a trace. It left it a torn mess, which means the rich folk want to enjoy watching clueless souls be ripped to pieces. You know, I can see why the Kurokumo clan, I can certainly understand as well, why they're a little more than vengeful. When a nest falls and they want some payback. Faust can't confirm these devices. Rather, this device has that particular purpose, or if it's there for sadistic pleasure. Don Quixote lamented it took her an hour to find that ball, and then Gregor alerted them to the trash crowds being attracted to their location by the popping of the ball. Heathcliff made it clear that they'd have a chat after that. Ishmael didn't look like she cared about this. Dante thought this activity would bring them together, but as they said, it's all gone to hell. Why does this keep happening? Well, it's because you're with the damned dozen. There are many reasons why I call them that, and Ishmael is usually the voice of reason. Gregor told them that they should be used to this by now, and told them that they needed to take care of business first. In this case, business is defined as dealing with the local wildlife. It looks like Ishmael's troubles are only going to get worse from here. Until next time. Hail the rabbit!